Hey, happy Pink Shirt Day. My name is Constable Dave Peterson. I'm a school resource officer with Edmonton Police Service. We're here talking about bullying with Dr. Sogan.
Hi.
What is bullying?
Oh, okay. So I've started to look at bullying as abuse, not bullying. I feel like we need to address it the way it is. And when you look at abuse, there's the wheel of abuse that I use with my clients and with mental health work. And that's verbal abuse, emotional abuse, manipulation, financial abuse. So when you look at it like abuse, it's more tangible and more understandable. So essentially, it's when it's unwanted contact, harassment, continuous irritation, non-consensual. I think that, and you ask the person to stop, they don't stop. Sometimes when you ask them to stop, it gets worse. So it's essentially unwanted advances. And I think the wheel of abuse is really important. So that's like financial abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, all the stuff. That's what's bullying to me.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds like the way you understand it is there's lots of opportunity for them to understand that this is not okay. It's not one.
No, not at all.
Absolutely.
Okay, what can an SRO do to help my child if my child is being bullied?
That's a great question. You know, in the school setting, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. That's for sure. We can be dealing with kids of a variety of backgrounds, a variety of cognitive abilities. So the person who's experiencing bullying absolutely can come to the SRO and seek guidance, seek help. Sometimes they don't want, you know, a big to-do and a lot of things done. Sometimes it's their friend, sometimes it's they just need advice. So that's the first level.
Okay.
It's just a listening ear, someone to talk to.
Okay.
Obviously stepping up from that, someone can come and make a complaint and ask the SRO to do an investigation to see if there needs to be school consequences, phone calls to the parents. And we do try to move towards reconciliation and healing circles whenever possible in a school setting.
Okay, excellent.
So, question for you, Dr. Sogan. How do you stop bullying?
Well, that's a loaded question. I think that to stop bullying, it depends on, I think, the environment that you're in. So, for example, social media, that happens so often, social media. It's sometimes, there's different routes, I feel, right? Just like what you said, I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all approach. So folks can perhaps block the person. Folks can, sometimes they feel like they need to respond to get their power back. I don't think that's an illogical response. And sometimes they have to escalate it to wherever that person may be. I've actually contacted EPS myself because of bullying, and I've been told to keep record of the accounts and what was said if I need to escalate it. Now, if it's in a school setting, I'm glad that you exist because you can talk about that. I think in personal, like interpersonal settings, bullying can happen as well when it's in relationships and dynamics, boundaries, communication, that can happen. But do any of these actually stop bullying? That I think is a bigger question, because we can do all of these things and the person can still, you know, keep doing the advances, and then I think other people need to get involved. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you said something important that sometimes other people need to come alongside. And when everybody understands their role, I think that's sometimes when we can move the needle on bullying, when bystanders understand that, oh, I have a purpose, I have a role in helping this situation.
Yeah, and I think that's so important for bystanders is, first of all, bullying can happen to anybody at any time, because abuse can happen to anybody at any time. I think that's important for us to shift the veil of denial and recognize that this can happen to anybody. It happens to adults at workplaces, across the board. There's mean people doing mean things. So when we normalize this experience, I think then it becomes easier to ask for help and accept help and receive help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
So, yeah.
So speaking of bystanders, what can somebody do if they know somebody or they're aware of a situation that looks to them like bullying?
Honestly, I appreciate when people just contact me. They just straight up contact me. They you know, private, right? Not in like comments so the world can see. But you know, that direct contact, I think it brings back that humanity, and it reminds you that, you know, not everybody's mean. So if you're a bystander and you see it, you can ask the person how you can support them. Not, you know, think for them, because sometimes they just need to vent to you, or they just need a hug, or they just need like a, you know, fist bump or something. So I think it's important to ask the person, you know, how can I support you? I see what's happening to you. I think that will, you know, help the person. You know, in our brains we have a 5-to-1 ratio that unfortunately it takes 5 positive comments to, you know, mitigate that 1 negative. So if you're getting 5 positive people coming to you and saying, how can I support you? It might, you know, decrease the intensity of that negative incident.
Absolutely. I think what you said there is huge. Not to just go in and fix it how you think, but to check in with the person, say like, hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Can I do anything for you?
Yeah.
It goes a long ways.
Exactly. And they may not be at a place to respond because they might be startled, and they might be at a place of shock. Or they might tell you like, hey, yeah, you know, I appreciate it. Here's what you can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What role does social media play in bullying?
Oh God, social media is awful for bullying. Social media is wonderful because here we are and we're putting this on social media. I think social media is wonderful if your intentions are good, and if your intentions are awful, it can be awful. I think it's important for people to recognize again that bullying happens all the time to everybody on social media, whether you have a large following or a small following, whether you're a private account or a public account. And so again, normalizing that experience, I think, removes the shame and the guilt. Oftentimes when we are on the receiving end of bullying, we get into a place of shame and guilt, and that actually stops us from seeking help or even talking about it. So I hope this helps, you know, remove that veil of secrecy, and so people can see that this is a real issue. And unfortunately, with anonymous accounts, people unfortunately feel like they can say things that they may not say to you in person, or they may say in person. But I feel like in person you can actually advance it quicker than an account that is user 5678. You know what I mean? So knowing that, then I think it's important to recognize your privacy settings. Are you willing to deal with it? If not, maybe making your accounts more private, disabling comments, disabling stitches and duets, disabling remixes, so that, you know, disabling people messaging you, disabling people sharing your posts. Those are some things that you can do, which inevitably really impacts your engagement negatively, but it does help you a little bit. Or recognizing that if you do not disable all of those things and you enable them, then unfortunately people can use that to their advantage.
Sounds like it can be a bit of a trade-off.
Yeah, and I think people should have social media hygiene. Social media hygiene is how much time are you spending on social media, and what self-sabotage behaviors are you engaging in after you've been bullied. I know myself, if I'm really having a bad day and someone says something negative, I'll read all of my comments. It's like a self-sabotage thing, but I catch myself and I'm like, hey, I know what you're doing, me to me. It's like me to me. So it's important to recognize social media hygiene, and like, are you contributing to that by engaging in self-sabotaging behaviors? Or do you have somebody to talk to? Do you have a mental health professional? Do you have tools to navigate what's happened? Because unfortunately, we have very little control of what people do to us, but a lot of control of what we do, reactionary response. So yeah.
Absolutely. And you know, you said a lot about how being anonymous can really embolden people.
Yeah.
And I think also the downside is when I'm working with people who made bad decisions or who are doing the immune behaviors, they sometimes don't realize they're dealing with a human. So social media can sometimes obscure the humanity of the person that they're dealing with, and it's some hybrid between reality and a video game for them.
And that's another thing that we need to normalize, is these are people with real feelings. I always see that when creators come out and explain, you know, their experiences, oftentimes the comment is, well, you put yourself online. Would you tell somebody, well, you left the house, you got a job, you went to school, like it, you know what I mean? That's victim blaming. And so we need to, again, remove that veil of that fluff and just recognize that no, this is awful, this is not to be normalized, although it has been. And even though people are anonymous, it's still, the impacts are very real, and the influence of it is very real. And there's unfortunately a lot of lives lost on social media due to this. There's been a lot of lives lost, and it's very serious. So I'm very grateful to be talking about it, because this is not like some silly thing, it's actually very real.
Absolutely.
I have a question for you.
All right.
Are there any supports for people who are getting bullied? Where to get help?
Yeah, that's an important question, because sometimes people feel like they're just stuck and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
My recommendation to people is talk to people that you trust, adults in your life,
Yeah.
people who maybe have been a little further down the road. For kids, their teachers, principal, parents, obviously, if that's someone that you can talk to.
Okay.
And if people are really stuck and they don't have those kind of supports, or if parents are wondering what to do, there are resources out there available. There's through Alberta Health Services, there's Addictions and Mental Health Crisis and Stabilization Team, and that can be reached at 780-407-1000.
Okay.
And if people are really in a bind, of course, you can call police. We have our YPACT team, which is Youth Police and Crisis Team, can come out. We do home visits, check up, follow up, and help connect people with the resources that are going to really help push them in the right direction.
Okay. And on the mental health front, I'd just like to add that there's so many hotlines that folks can call, free hotlines in Alberta. There's so many of them. And there's a lot of places that you can get into for free drop-in counseling. Just don't keep it in, because it's such a normal, unfortunate experience, and so you're not alone. So therefore, there are people that are there to help you. Don't sit in that shame and guilt. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything to deserve it. You existing in that space does not warrant this behavior, and there are people who care, and there are people who will help you out. Yay. When does bullying turn criminal, and is bullying against the law?
That's a great question, and there's a lot to say about that. When we look at criminal behavior, often the line is crossed when we get into the realms of violence and exploitation.
Okay.
That's when it really turns, and things like uttering threats are the obvious ones. There's a whole suite of laws in the criminal code that came out in 2016 about indecent communication, harassing communication, that the government brought in.
Yeah.
And those are very broad laws that can be very powerful in combating this. And then obviously when we get into that realm, we can start looking at breaking down the anonymous veil. Right? We can reach out to technology companies and get the information that we need. And in certain circumstances, we can get it immediately if it's exigent. There's also in Edmonton, we're one of the only jurisdictions that has made it illegal in Edmonton to bully. So in 2003, City Council passed a bylaw against bullying.
Okay.
And so that's for people who are under 18, who are receiving repeated communication in a way that makes them feel harassed.
Okay.
Yeah, and so school resource officers get to use this. It's a great tool for education, and also just to set that boundary to say like, hey, if this continues, it could be a $250 ticket, and that can ruin your day.
Yes, it can, especially if you're under 18.
Yeah.
But even adults, I would remind it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. So Dr. Sogan, thanks so much for coming and being with us and sharing your insights and your experience about bullying. And thank you all for joining us. If you have more questions, if you need more resources, there's going to be things attached to this video. and reach out and don't suffer alone. Happy Pink Shirt Day.
Happy Pink Shirt Day. Thanks for